Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Happy Friday. This is day 22nd, 2020. Let me know if you can hear me okay, if y'all's coming through. And change a couple things here before we get started. All right, I guess everyone can hear me okay. Let's go ahead and get into today's activity. This week, we're going to continue, and for today, Friday, we're going to conclude this activity that we started earlier this week, preparing and conducting an interview. Yesterday and the day before, we started an activity where we wrote out questions, and then we wrote out indirect questions with the indirect question equivalent to the question. Today, we want to conclude this activity by now writing one of the responses from either of the interviewees to your indirect question. So I'm going to share my screen to show you
Ben,
specifically what I'm referring to. Yes.
I don't know if it is my internet connection, but I can hear you like very well.
Me either.
All right. No, okay. Let me check here. 1 second. All right, I'm going to try to close some apps. My computer seems to be running a little bit slow, so this might be the problem. But I'm going to turn the camera off, and can you guys let me know if audio's coming through a little bit better? Or is it the same?
Now I can hear you a little bit better.
All right, well, let's, I'll continue if you guys are having some issues hearing me, or if you need me to repeat something, let me know. Just jump in, interrupt me, and let me know if you can't make out what I'm saying. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And we're going to continue working today in the Microsoft Word document that's found in Microsoft Teams. So if you go to Grammar and Context 2, under the General tab, under Files, under Week 13, we're going to open up again the Word document that we worked on yesterday, direct and indirect questions. All right, so today we want to conclude this activity by doing the third aspect, right, of this activity, which is adding now a response to each of your indirect questions. So we started, the first thing we did with this document was to include direct questions. The second thing was to add an indirect question for each direct question. Today, the third part of this activity and the final part of this activity now is to respond to each of the indirect questions that we posted yesterday. Now, the responses, you can choose if you want to respond, if you want to include the response from either of the two people that you interviewed during your interview. All right, so you can choose which response. It doesn't really matter. You can choose your favorite response, but you only need to include one response per indirect question. So as we talked about yesterday, I would first begin with your list of direct questions. Then just below your list of direct questions, include your list of indirect questions. And then today, add your responses underneath each of your indirect questions. Now, since our last class and today's class, I went in and left many comments. And so also today we can spend time clarifying any comments that I left in the document. I would recommend that everyone compare your responses to the responses of your classmates. Also compare the feedback that I provide you versus some of the feedback that I provide some of your classmates. The whole purpose of working in this shared Word online document is so that you can not only see each other's work and can compare, but also you can see my feedback and see how maybe some of my comments that relate to someone else, how they may or may not relate to your current text, your questions in this case. All right, so make sure that you're checking and comparing your work with your classmates. And also, the last thing I'll mention is I want to provide some examples or an explanation of word order for indirect questions, okay? Because I think many of the types of feedback that I provided relate to the second part of the indirect question. So let me give you an example. So let me find an example. All right, I'm going to open up this in my browser. Hopefully, my computer doesn't explode here. And hopefully the audio is coming through a little bit better, hopefully. All right. So hopefully this is a little bit easier to see. Let me scroll down towards the bottom. All right. So let's look at an example. And I'm going to try to make this a little bit larger. And let me know, guys, if you are having a hard, if you can see this or if you can't see this, okay, let me know. All right, so here, let's look at an example of an indirect question. All right, make sure all of your indirect questions end with a period. Remember that because they're indirect questions, they're actually statements, right? They kind of look like questions, but they're actually a statement. So we will need to end each of your indirect questions with a period. Now notice here we have basically two parts to this indirect question. All right, the first part is I ask my mom. Now I'm going to let's imagine that we have a pronoun at the end of this first part of the sentence. So the sentence would read, I ask my mom something. Okay, we could say that, right? That would be a complete sentence. I ask my mom something. All right, period. All right, that would be one sentence. Now, what we're doing here with indirect questions, we're actually writing what's called an embedded sentence. So what we're doing basically is we're embedding one sentence into another. That's what we're doing here. So instead of saying, I ask my mom something, we can insert a second sentence. She can describe how she can describe the coronavirus, right? We're inserting this, how she can describe the coronavirus. We're inserting that text, that phrase, or I'm sorry, that clause into the sentence, I ask my mom something. We're actually removing the word something and we're inserting how she can describe the coronavirus. All right, so this is important because it relates to word order. Because this is not a direct question, right? A direct question, as you know, we have to include some form of the verb before the subject, right? We looked at many examples yesterday, and we've been discussing the form of a direct question with a question word, an auxiliary subject. We actually have to change the order and move the verb before the subject, whether it's an auxiliary verb or whether it's the main verb, right? And again, we've seen many examples of that when we compare this to a direct question. But in this case, because it's not a direct question, it's really actually a statement, then we're going to follow the subject, verb, word order. That is, the verb's going to come, and any auxiliary verbs are going to come after the subject. Subject first, auxiliary, and main verb, right? If it's a complex verb. All right, so here's an example. I asked my mom, what did I ask my mom? How she can describe the coronavirus. Now, remember with the terms coronavirus and COVID-19, you can use either term. But remember with coronavirus, most of the time you're going to need an article, right? So you would say she can describe the coronavirus. The coronavirus, right, is serious. All right, so we have, in this case, we need the article. If we use COVID-19, most of the time, for the most part, we don't need an article. COVID-19, right, is a pandemic. All right, so be careful with the article usage between the terms coronavirus and COVID-19. But notice here the order of the subject and the verb. I asked my mom what? What did I ask my mom? How the coronavirus affected her daily activities. What's the subject? Coronavirus. What's the verb? Affected. I asked my mom what? What did I ask my mom? How? Question word. She, subject, is protecting. Verb phrase. Notice the verb phrase comes after the subject. Notice the subject comes after the question word. I asked my mom what? I asked my mom something. What did you ask your mom? How much time she thinks that we are going to stay in quarantine, right? How much time she thinks. She's the subject, thinks is the verb. And this is actually an embedded sentence within an embedded sentence. She thinks something. What does she think? That we are going to stay home. Here's another embedded sentence, that we are going to stay home. All right, so these are noun phrases that are being inserted or embedded into the sentence itself. We call these embedded sentences. And what I want you to do is pay close attention to the word order. In all of these cases, the subject is coming before the verb phrase. Again, the verb phrase could be a simple verb with one word, or it could be a compound verb with either a modal or an auxiliary verb. All right, so I wanted to bring that to your attention, guys. Be careful with your word order. In the indirect question, compare that to direct questions where, for the most part, all verbs are coming before the subject, whether it's an auxiliary verb or the main verb. How can the coronavirus be presented? Right? Question word, auxiliary, subject, main verb, right? We have to flip the auxiliary in this case so the auxiliary actually comes before the subject. This is one of the main differences between a direct question and our indirect questions. All right, so I wanted to bring this up as you guys are checking your work. Please, as you are modifying your text and you're addressing the feedback in the comments that I've left in the shared Word Online document, please remove or delete the comments as you change your text. If you have questions, of course, today in class, let's address those. Unmute your mic. Let me know. Ask me to look at something, or if you're not sure about my feedback, let me know. And if you replied to one of my comments and I missed your comment, of course, also bring that to my attention so that I can look at that. Since there were several comments, I may have missed some of your responses. All right, any questions, guys, about today's activity? Okay, if there are no more questions, I'm going to go ahead and mute my mic. But again, just jump in if you guys have questions about today's activity.
Ben, did you already check all the questions of us?
I think so. I think I checked everyone. If I didn't leave any comments, or if you think that I didn't check something, let me know. I didn't check like every single sentence. A lot of times I would leave some comments and then you can apply some of my feedback to the rest of your sentences. But I left comments, I think, where I needed to leave comments. But again, just let me know if you think I missed something, or if you're not sure if something is correct. I can look at it right now. I would suggest, guys, if I leave any comments related to your direct questions, that you address those changes first, because it's likely that the changes that you make to your direct question will also imply a change to your indirect question. So make sure that you check first any comments made to direct questions. I've noticed that some of you are using the phrase "she thinks." In most cases, we can eliminate that that clause. Okay, so try to avoid saying "she thinks," "I think," "he thinks."
Ben,
Yes.
so we need to have the indirect question and then the answer. Then the other indirect question and then the answer, like one and one, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yes, I don't know if you heard me, Wendy. Yes, that is correct. One question, your indirect question of your interviewees, and then the next indirect question, and then a response.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ben,
Yes, Wendy, go ahead.
can we start like the sentence of the response with, for example, she believes that, instead of she said that, she stated that.
Yes, you can use different verbs. You can say um, she believes that. Mm, let's see. I asked her. Yeah, I guess it's going to depend on what she's saying, right? If it still applies to something in the present, or if what she was talking about referred to something in the past. Uh, it depends on that, I think. And I think I probably would stick with the first sentence by stating, using, you can use a variety of verbs, but saying that keeping the verb in the past. So she stated that, and then you decide which verb tense is the best, right, to use, whether it's the present tense or past tense, depending on her answer or his answer. It might be easier to see an example if you want to provide, if you want me to look at a specific example to clarify what I mean.
Oh yeah, you can check my responses. It's because
right.
she answered, I believe that. So
Okay, which number? Which question?
number 2. So
Okay.
I have 2. She said
Okay, I
that
see.
she
I see what
believes.
you mean.
So
So
it was.
she said that she believes. That's okay. I understood your question to mean that you wanted to start the sentence with "she believes."
Oh yeah, that's what I
But
said
I would.
because
Oh,
it
okay. Well,
sounded
I would start it.
like weird.
I would start it like you have it. She said that she believes that Mexico. That's fine. Or you could say she said that Mexico is adequately managed. The point here that I want to make is, like, it's not really necessary to say she believes that. There's nothing wrong grammatically, and it makes perfect sense. But sometimes when we overuse that phrase, it's redundant because what you say, what she says, is what she believes. You know what I mean? It's like saying I
Yeah.
think. She said that she thinks this. You don't need to say she thinks it because that's what she thinks. It's obvious, right? What she's saying what she thinks. We're basically going under that assumption that people are responding based on what they believe or what they think.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Double check, guys, right now your indirect questions. Make sure that you have a period at the end, right? These are statements. These are declarative sentences that require ending punctuation, right? So make sure that you have a period after each one of your indirect questions. Also, I'm going through and I'm trying to keep all the text the same. So if I'm changing the text, please go ahead and leave it. Just so, again, we have a little bit of consistency with regard to size and font type. All right, so we're going to use Calibre, font size 11. But I'm going through to change it. But if you could please leave the text the way it is. Again, just to keep the whole document a little bit more uniform. Okay, guys, we're getting close to the end of today's class. I wanted to spend just a moment to show you a website. And so if you could take just a second to take a look at my screen. I came across an example of the prepositional phrase, at the house. And the prepositional phrase at the house is not an incorrect use of this phrase. Okay. The example that I came across was not grammatically incorrect, but with prepositions, prepositions are really difficult in English in terms of really knowing which preposition is either correct or incorrect versus also which is more common. So if you're looking at my screen, you'll notice that I'm at Google Trends. And what I like about Google Trends is that it gives us a way to compare words or phrases in terms of how common or how often they're used in real discourse in real life. Because essentially, Google Trends uses their vast resources, right, of material and information, and it basically just scans it and sees which words and phrases are used the most, and also where they're used. So in this case, at the house, we can compare this with, let's try in the house. You'll notice the graph below. Give it a second here. All right, gives us a graphical representation or frequency between using at the house or in the house. So as long as you're okay with the meaning, right? If you, in this case, again, there's no problem with the meaning of both of these. It's slightly different, but it's essentially grammatically correct to use either one of these. You'll notice that in the house is used most often. So a lot of times when you're looking at idiomatic expressions, phrasal verbs that really have these particles after the verbs, these prepositions that come after the verb, which one is it, right? Sometimes using Google Trends will help, and it might help you determine which term or which phrase you might want to end up using in your own writing. So regardless of what class you're using, I recommend using Google Trends, especially in the case where you're looking at phrasal verbs, idiomatic expressions, right? Is it in the other hand or on the other hand, right? If you're confused about which one it is, in the other hand, sometimes using this and comparing on the other hand, maybe this will help you determine which one certainly is most common, but even in some cases, which one is the correct version. Right. So here we see in the other hand, right, which is not it's not grammatically incorrect. It just has a different meaning. It's actually literal. In the other hand, the ball is in the other hand, right? You can say that, but it's not an idiomatic expression and it's not a connector. It's just a prepositional phrase. On the other hand, really functions more as a sentence connector. But sometimes you can see differences and you can also see where or which part of the world these phrases are most common. Okay, so Google Trends is kind of cool. It's a nice site, so check it out. And yeah, so this week, guys, we're going to finish our activity. This activity consists of 3 parts. Number 1, make sure that you have your direct question. Number 2, make sure that you have listed the indirect questions just below the direct questions in the same order. And the indirect question should come directly from the direct questions. And number 3, include at least one response below or beneath each of the indirect questions in the form of reported speech. In the form of reported speech. All right, this will be our activity for this week. Are there any questions about the activity?
Yeah, just to be clear, reported speech is when you say he said that and then the quote word for word, right?
That's well, reported speech is more like when you have like an embedded sentence and you're saying she said that she does not enjoy staying home. That's reported speech. It's a,
Oh.
and it could be a direct quote, Oscar, or it could be paraphrased. But it's more in terms of think of it more like yeah, having a question word or a connector, like she stated that, it has that. She stated that she enjoys staying home.
Oh, okay, thank you. Oh, that's what we
Mhm.
have to put there, right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, thanks, man.
All right, you're welcome. Any other questions, guys? All right, well, if there are no more questions, then we'll stop there for today. And enjoy the rest of your weekend, guys, and we'll see everybody on Monday as we start week 14. All right. Thanks, guys. Take care. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Ben.